when I wrote about the history of the Texas. It was a move that angered Sherman leaders, understandably so, since it meant a loss of jobs and a decent payroll for several years afterwards. What I didn't include in my first piece were details on just how lively Sherman's response became, voiced mainly in editorials in Sherman's leading newspaper at the time, the Sherman Daily Register. I feared that too many details about Sherman's anger would overshadow the telling of the history of the Roundhouse. Besides, that anger makes for an interesting story on its own. The overall attitude of Sherman city leaders in the wake of losing the Roundhouse was perhaps summed up in an editorial that appeared on page 1 of the August 5, 1886 Daily Register. The Texas and Pacific has, within the past 3 years, struck this city some pretty tough licks. Though still hurting from those pretty tough licks, there is evidence that Sherman intended to repair at least one bit of damage she intended to get the Texas. Newspaper clippings show that the arguments for Sherman and against Bonham began in earnest in late 1886 and carried into 1887. They mostly centered around the availability of water, a much-needed item for the steam locomotives of the time. Sherman was developing a good waterworks system while Bonham was struggling with old, inconsistent wells. This is the only known photo of Bonham's Texas. Photo courtesy of the Fannin County Historical Museum. City leaders strongly believed that if a first-rate water system was developed, the chance of getting the Roundhouse and division station status returned to Sherman was excellent. The Dallas Morning News of August 17, 1886 reported the leaders of Sherman as believing that the divisional station of the Transcontinental Division of the Texas and Pacific Railroad is a plum worth reaching for. It further reported that it is now thought by those who have an opportunity to know that the roundhouses, shops, etc., which were taken to Bonham a little over 2 years ago, will be brought back to Sherman in case a good supply of water is found. It should be noted that often the papers used the term roundhouses instead of the more appropriate roundhouse. The news piece also stated that a prominent railroad man today, in a conversation with a reporter, said that he knew that if a good water supply was secured, Sherman would get the roundhouse and shops back. Sounding the same theme, the Sherman Daily Register of August 27 reported Sherman leaders were still optimistic that if water can be secured, the Texas and Pacific roundhouses will be brought back to this town. Sherman leaders were sure they had the edge over Bonham, and it was time to sound the trumpets. And the loudest trumpet was the newspaper. The literary assault launched by the Sherman Daily Register, SDR, against Bonham is best put into 3 categories: 1. Sound arguments based on reason and facts; 2. Subtle, one-line reminders; and 3. Downright cheap shots that are humorous when read today. First, the sound arguments. A lengthy editorial containing 7 reasons why the division station should be returned to Sherman appeared on page 1 of the January 22, 1887 SDR. Among them were, Bonham's lack of water, Sherman's good roads, t. The editorial concluded, with these reasons laid before the management of the railroad in a proper manner, and with a material influence to back them, will accomplish the desire of Sherman to regain the roundhouse and divisional shops. 1 week later, the January 29 issue argued that the divisional facilities at Bonham are being neglected while Sherman's rail yards were being improved. It concluded, the facts are too apparent. Sherman is the proper place for the divisional station, and out of eternal fitness of things, has grown the intention to put it back here. The SDR of April 15 noted, ever since the transcontinental division between Sherman and Texarkana has been laid with steel rails, and the water gave out at Bonham, t. It further argued that Texas and Pacific owned enough ground in this city upon which to build roundhouses, shops, etc. the turntable pit as it looks today. The roundhouse was in the background where the trees now stand. The April 18 SDR argued that there was no water at Bonham while a system of waterworks is just about completed here. The April 25 issue noted that railroad employees, referred to as trainmen, were talking of the proposed change of base of divisional operation from Bonham to Sherman, and are glad of it for the city has always been a favorite point. The April 27 issue reported that the railroadmen on the Transcontinental Division of the Texas and Pacific all want the roundhouse, etc., brought back to Sherman. The same was also reported in the May 6 SDR. Finally, the May 11 issue noted that the rail yards in Sherman were being inspected by Texas. It noted that improvements could mean a return of the division station to Sherman, concluding, "There is much to be gained by getting this divisional station back to its original place, and the Register trusts no time will be lost." Intermingled with the reasoned arguments were the occasional one-line reminders. A couple of examples include the April 7 SDR, "The divisional station of the Texas and Pacific should be brought back to Sherman from Bonham," and the April 22, "Bonham, DOESNT, have the requisite amount of water to maintain the division." Such reminders also appeared in the April 27, May 4 and May 5 issues, and two were in the May 10 as well. Perhaps the liveliest reading of all came in the form of editorials that were downright cheap shots. Every once in a while the editors at the SDR abandoned reason and took the literary gloves off. March 23 issue noted, "Bonham, the present divisional station of the Texas and Pacific Railroad, is a small and insignificant town, 26 miles east of Sherman." It further noted that Bonham was of no consequence as a railroad center. Bonham, the April 18 issue argued, is of no great commercial importance, and the amount of yard work necessitated for the successful carrying out of local work is not great. Saving the harshest blow for last, and commenting on the vastly important water issue, the SDR of May 1, 1887 noted, "A Bonham correspondent to the Fort Worth Gazette gets excited, and says there is more water at Bonham than any place between Whitesboro and Anana. There is a pond a few miles west of Sherman that Bonham could be drowned in." All of this Bonham gushes said to keep the divisional station away from Sherman, but that little village might as well give up. Change is inevitable, sooner or later. Just in case you are wondering, Anana, located roughly 8 miles southeast of Clarksville in Red River County, was on the T. when Texas, an insignificant town of no consequence that could be drowned in a pond a few miles west of Sherman, kept its roundhouse and division station status until the late 1940s, when the adoption of diesel-electric motors made the steam locomotives, and the roundhouses that served as their repair shops, obsolete. Update on my article about Jay Gould's tour of Bonham. Another newspaper clipping has surfaced showing that Gould's tour of Bonham in 1891 was not his first visit to this area. The Fort Worth Gazette of January 20, 1887 notes that Gould rolled through Paris and Bonham the day before, apparently without stopping, on his way to conduct business in Sherman and Denison. Also, the January 20 Sherman Daily Register mentions Gould spending quite a bit of time inspecting the Missouri Pacific rail lines in Bells. Given the timing of Gould's 1887 visit, he no doubt got an earful about Sherman's desire to have the Texas